If you love producing music from home, mixing records, writing your own stuff, and putting it out to the world, this video is for you. Now, I put this video specifically not for professionals, but for people who are looking to improve themselves, who are working with themselves and trying to get better sounding records, you know, because it's hard. We work on our own stuff, we put it out to the world, and then when we compare it to other things, sometimes it doesn't match up in our own expectations. I've thought long, deep, and hard about how my sort of journey and the things that I've learned along the way to help me get to the point I am, and I'm going to share some of that with you. My first tip is learning hierarchy. When I started mixing, I wanted everything to be loud and clear, and that's that's something I experience a lot with a lot of amateur artists and people who are starting out. They want to hear everything. Go out, listen to your favorite records. As much detail and as much layering as there may be in there, there's always 2 to 3 key elements which will stand out to a listener. And that's because the human ear can only ever capture 2 to 3 main elements, and also it stops it from confusing the main message of the music. And by that, when you actually go and mix your records, you can think more analytically and also more creatively in a sense, because you've got a goal in mind. I want to make people dance, therefore this kick drum has to be solid, has to be a main element. I want to make people sing, this vocalist, the melody has to really shine and has to be super tight. My second tip is to never settle for second best. When I was starting out mixing records, especially for other people as well as myself, I always thought I could fix it in the mix. And I was also a little bit scared about telling clients that some of the material they'd given me wasn't up to scratch. Now, fast forward, I won't even put a booking in my calendar for a mix unless I sign off on all the material. And the reason being is because I want to be inspired by the production I'm listening to. I want every element to elicit an emotion and get me excited about mixing a record. And the reason being is because if the people who are working on the record don't even get excited about it, how can you expect a listener to? And it goes the same for you. If a particular take can be re-recorded, if a particular sample isn't working and you can put another sample there, or a particular melody line isn't quite gelling, fix it up before you get to mixing, because no amount of mixing is going to help fix that. Simple, just don't settle for second best when it comes to producing and getting those stems ready for mixing. Tip number 3 is to calibrate your monitoring. Now, you probably wondered when you've mixed a record, you've sent it out to the world, you're listening to it in your environments, why certain things sound louder than they actually were in your studio, or why things aren't quite lining up the way you would hope them to. Now, this was a mistake I made early on. I set up my speakers correctly in an equilateral triangle. I had my first points of reflections all treated when I was starting to mix. But one thing I didn't do is I didn't calibrate my monitoring level, so I had a consistent reference point for all my listening. What I ended up doing is I just made everything louder than everything else, and it kept cranking my monitoring system just to get more energy out of it. Nothing I was listening to was consistent. I didn't have any reference level for what I was listening to against other material, which led to me never really understanding the real sound of my original room that I worked out of. Now, Case system is a really good system you can use to calibrate your monitoring. I know what everything is meant to sound like when my monitoring control is set to 12 o'clock. The simple thing which works for me, what that means for you, is just calibrate your monitoring and listen to it at that level consistently. Last but not least is that the music you're working on can be different, and that's perfectly fine. What I find a lot of people doing is they've got a different song, they've got something unique, and that should be considered as its own and approached in its own unique way. And what they try and do is they try and box themselves into whatever they're hearing on the radio. Now, as much as even the title of this video insinuates we're trying to chase a sound which sounds professional, that's resemblant of what people are hearing out there, sometimes that's not always the best thing. Think of people like Billie Eilish, Bjork, even when Lordi was releasing records, and even some of Adele's records, in contrast to what was going on at the time, were different. And that's not a bad thing. It can capture a listener if it's good music. So sometimes embrace the different in your music. If you want to make better sounding mixes, these are a good starting point. It's not going to change it overnight for you, but if you just follow a few of these things, it's going to help you along the way. If you like this video, like, share and subscribe, and until next time, take care.